All right, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, hello, it's your buddy Mr. G. Today we're going to talk about graphic design. Graphic design, we kind of break the word down. Graphic means visual, pictures, images. Design means organizing things in a certain way. So it's visual communication. So we're going to talk about graphic design and how we're going to apply that, how it's a little bit different than other forms of art that we've talked about in the past. So in this course, we're going to be doing graphic design. So let's just go to straight to Google and say, let's just define that. So if we go to Google and say, define graphic design, Google says it is the art or skill of combining text and pictures in advertisements, magazines, or books. So what makes graphic design different from other kinds of art? Generally, when we think of graphic design and advertising design, we associate that with marketing of goods and services. So, art that is intended to remind, persuade, or influence you to buy products. It's not always, but it's what we generally think of. So, some types of graphic design, we've got advertising, which we mentioned, branding, which is kind of like an overarching umbrella over an advertising campaign, so that things are unified. We have web design, magazine and layout design, packaging and paper design, which is how things and products will be packaged so that they fit into a brand, TV and motion graphics, signage, which are billboards and uh, benches and advertisements on our cell phones and in social media and when we're online and all kinds of places we can have signage, and digital art of all sorts and shapes and sizes. So, if we're talking about commercial graphic design and advertising of products, there's all kinds of different forms that that can take. So, we can talk about coupons, flyers, fast food and food packaging, commercials, billboards, point of sale. Point of sale would be like those stand up advertisements that you see, like in the grocery store, for instance. Or when you go to the gas station and you fuel up your car and you see a little tabletop display displaying maybe a candy bar or some kind of product. Wearables. I'm wearing a Nike T-shirt here. That would be an example of a wearable product. Social media. We're all inundated with social media 24/7 from all sides, especially in your age group. So that is a very big part of advertising and product design nowadays. Having a web presence, not only in social media, but also online and in advertising across the board. Event marketing and placement, putting our products in places where they'll be seen by the people that we want to see them. And then sports and sports adjacent marketing. So here we have some big brands that are globally recognized here. You probably recognize all of these brands that are on here. Um, Developing a logo is what we often think of as one of the first things when we think of advertising design. And it is very important to groups and companies so that they can be recognized and they want to establish their identity. It kind of sets a benchmark for the company and who they are. So you can look at this large grouping of different advertise or different logos that are on this page, and you're kind of hard pressed to, even if you're not quite sure what some of them are, you've probably seen most of these out there. And they're grouped kind of, we got some technology companies, some sports companies, some technology companies, automotive and industrial companies, uh, big movie and news companies. So everybody needs a logo in the advertising world. So it is a very big part of art. But somebody sat down and designed each and every one of these. All right, not only are we selling products, we also have advertising and graphic design and pop culture and art. Art involved in popular media such as music, movies, television, social media, and celebrities all can set trends. And if we can recognize trends or predict trends, often that might influence the products that we might put out. So that is a very important aspect. So if you look at all of these things, new trends come and go all of the time. And like I said, if we can predict some of those trends, or as they say, ride the wave of a trend as it comes in, oftentimes it helps us to influence what kind of products are going to be successful and what kind of products and advertisement is going to be unsuccessful. Finally, graphic design shows up in politics, not just traditional politics like we're thinking of when you think of like presidential races and things like that, but also just in our everyday influential media that we think about. You think about like the symbol of Black Lives Matter, for instance, and the resist, that graphic there, the Me Too movement. Those graphics associated with that. So it's not necessarily always affiliated with a political party. We have other kind of political messaging that we try to influence people with, and identifying imagery and graphics with those movements often helps us to solidify those. And then there's, of course, our regular kind of advertising that we get every 2 to 4 years, where we are inundated from all sides on how we should vote and how we should change our opinions or see views as one way or another. So, politics is an important part of graphic design as well, and political opinion. All right, so we are in graphic design, and this course is going to deal with the elements of art and the principles of design, just like every other art course you will find. All right, so we're going to quickly go through those. Okay, so if you've had my class or you've had other art classes, you've probably talked about the elements of art. So I'm going to go through these quickly, and we're going to talk a little bit about how we're going to apply those in graphic design and advertising design. Starting with line. So line is a point that moves through space. It is a moving point, and it comes in all shapes and sizes and forms. Okay. In advertising art here, we can see line in these graphics here. We've got line here where we can stress a word. We can stress with borders. We can set up organization with line. We can make dividing lines. Move this guy up here. And then we can also see lines as decoration and as elements of movement. Shape. Shape is you take a line and you enclose it and you make a shape. If we look at these familiar shapes that we see here, again, talking about logos, we see all of these are made of shapes. They're all put in black and white. They don't have their native colors, kind of emphasizing their shapes. But because of the shape, they're all very recognizable as logos to these companies. So if you go through there, see how many of those you can recognize. Is there any that you don't recognize? Value. Value is the quality of dark to light. Um, so it helps us differentiate things in advertising and graphic design. It can help us to set moods, such as our picture of our robot here. It can help to identify shapes and make things stand out or hide. It allows us to provide emphasis. We can define shapes. We can hide shapes. Has many different uses. Form. Form is the quality of three dimensionality, whether it be real, as in something I can hold in my hand, like a basketball or a pencil, or something that's implied, such as this image. It's a flat two-dimensional image, but it appears to be two-dimensional or three-dimensional. So, form in advertising, we use all the time when we make objects. So, if we want it to look more dimensional, we'll use geometric and organic forms to help make those feel more dimensional. Color, of course, is very important. If you think about brands and you think about Coca-Cola and the specific color of Coca-Cola red, for instance, is very identified with that brand. Color is made up of three things. It's made up of the hue, what color it is, the value, how dark or light it is, and the intensity, how dull or bright it is. Now, we're not going to go a whole lot into this, but color and color theory can be a whole different course all on its own. And the more you use it, the more you understand it. It is pretty complicated, but it's also, there are some simplistic elements to it, such as you should know your primary colors, like in the top left here, which are blue, yellow, and red. You have your secondary colors, green, purple, and orange. Tertiary colors are the intermediate colors in between there. And then on one side of the color wheel, you have your warm colors. On the other side of the color wheel, you have your cool colors. Okay, and there's different color schemes such as monochromatic, analogous, complementary, and triadic that we can employ in our color design and in our design work. Texture. Texture refers to surface quality. What does something feel like or appear to feel like? And just like form, it can be realistic or it can be implied. We can see a picture of alligator skin and it can be on a photograph, but we can't physically touch it, but we can imply that there is texture there. Just like this image that we have here, we can imply that there is a texture here as it undulates in the frame there. So there's all kinds of textures. You can have, just there's just all kinds of textures. You can have, environmental textures, biological. We can have texture of just line and illustration can create texture. So it is really everywhere, and you kind of look around. We identify texture really kind of defines those surface qualities and what we want to see. Space. That's one of the more complicated ones for people to grasp sometimes, but it is the quality of depth in a piece, as in dimensionality, as in foreground, middle ground, background, and it is also defined as positive and negative space, the space of what is there and also what is not there. So we have some different space examples here, kind of related to graphic design. So we got proximity, like how it's arranged. The simple idea of overlap. You can tell that my hand is closer to you because it is overlapping my face. Opacity can set up space. Light and shadow can create space. Perspective and depth are also elements of space where we kind of make things push back or come forward into the background or the foreground. Typography. Now we are in graphic design here. Typography is an element of art that is super duper important to the graphic design form because it is the visual uh, image of language. So we use it all the time and it's all around us. Okay. So we will focus a lot. And as a graphic designer or potential advertising designer, you need to be a ninja with typography and need to be able to do all kinds of things with it. So just really quick here, these are just some basic typography and some basic terms. Up in the top right, the first one there, we got sans serif. Sans serif refers to that there are no little brackets or bars on the ends of letters. You see there's no little brackets. The second one there, serif, it has those little brackets. And those are the two main categories of letters you'll see that are serif and sans serif. Sans meaning none or without, and serif referring to the tiny little blocks on the corners and the bottoms of letters. There's also slab serif, rounded, script or illustrative type, black letter or calligraphic. There's decorative or illustrative ones, and then we got some abstract type like our robotic R down there. All right. So not only do we have the elements of art, we also have the principles of art and design. What we use to organize the elements of art or to make, or the tools to make art. So again, we're going to talk about these in a way that is not just necessarily talking about fine arts, but also how it applies to graphic arts and advertising arts. So we have in this Alexander Calder painting, we're talking about balance. Balance is the way elements are arranged to create a feeling of stability in a work. Such as symmetrical, like this picture of the Last Supper here by Da Vinci, so that things are kind of mirror image left and right, or asymmetrical by this James Whistler painting here, where it's showing that one side is heavier visually than the other side. We can also have radial balance, where things are circular or radiate out from a central point, such as these pictures here by Alphonse Mucha in this design. And if we give some examples of Graphic design. So these magazine layouts here. So you look at this. So if you look at the first column there, we have symmetrical balance. They're aiming to have equal weight on both sides. So they're balancing the first one up there, the pictures against the text. And down in the second one down there, you can see that they're balancing objects so they seem to have equal weight on both sides of the paper. In the middle column, you'll see that we have a asymmetrical balance where things are not equal on each side. So they're trying to set up a asymmetrical balance where one side is heavier, it has some direction. And then the last column, you can see some radial design and radial balance there. Contrast. Got a picture by Ansel Adams and a painting by Salvador Dali here. Contrast does not always just refer to. It's not value. Value is the as the property of dark to light. It does involve that, but it also any kind of contrast in shape or color or texture and differences that are going to allow us to see some more interest. So a large difference between two things to create interest and tension. So we can have all kinds of different contrasts. So you're going to see these little symbols here, and you'll see some of these repeating because they apply to more than one principle of design. So we can have contrast in shape, we can have in color, we can have in scale, we can have layouts that are different. Typography can have contrast. The type and alignment can work together. We can blend multiple of those together to make different contrasting elements. Emphasis. Emphasis is where you want your eye to go. What do we want to point out in these pictures? Here we have Jim Dine and Gustav Klimt paintings here, and both have very specific emphasis. The focal point of an image is when one area or thing stands out the most. In uh, graphic design, we have all kinds of ways that we can move emphasis and get the viewer to look at something that we want them to. We can use scale, we can use color, we can use space, we can use perspective. In addition, you can think about visual graphics, and you can use motion and animation and proportion and moving things that can draw our attention as well. Movement. In this piece by Vincent van Gogh, Starry Night, we've all seen this. It is a great example of movement in a piece. Your eye wants to go with the lines that are in the sky of the painting. Movement is the path the viewer's eye takes through the artwork. So, how do we use that in graphic design and layout design and advertising art? So, if we look at these four different layouts here, these all have the same elements in them. They've got the same three pictures, they've got the same type, and they all are put in a different way. Okay, now the movement is being affected every time we move those around. So, which one is the most successful? It's debatable. What do you want to have the focal point of the piece to be? But they all have movement in some way by changing the layout. So, that's something in graphic design we're going to use a lot. Pattern and repetition. Anytime you take one thing and you repeat it multiple times, you can create a pattern, such as this detail from this Gustav Klimt piece here. Pattern is repeating of a design. So we can have biological or more graphic and man-made textures and patterns that repeat, but that's something we're going to use a lot in advertising. Rhythm, just like movement, it's the motion and repetitive design that is going to help set a feel of movement in a piece. We will use that quite a bit in graphic design as well. So, like this pattern here, if we took one of those individual elements, that little graphic block there, and we had it, it would be very static. But once we repeat it multiple times, it gives a sense of movement. Same thing with the lines on the right side of the page with the black and white and the pink lines. They create a sense of movement. Okay, you notice there's kind of a hang up with the black line that goes into a squiggly and then continues out, but it makes a movement from left to right or from east to west, side to side that we can see. Unity. Now, Unity is going to be one of the harder ones to grasp, and it's kind of one of those elements of art that is kind of easier to see when it's not working rather than when it is working. Unity is when all the elements and principles work together to create a pleasing image. Okay, so nothing is sticking out like a sore thumb. Something that's, it just seems like it shouldn't be there because it hasn't been designed well to go along with what we have. Let's talk about unity in these three advertisements for these ceiling fans here. So these ads have a unity to them. They all have a similar pastel uh, tone of color. They all have similar products, and they're all sent in this kind of like kind of space age polished metal design work. Um, they appear high style. The lettering is consistent across it. The background imagery of the graphics is consistent. So they have a unified look to them. Okay. So if one of these fans, for instance, was changed to a more wooden wicker looking fan, all of a sudden these three ads would not have unity anymore. One would be sticking out and not fit. So that is unity. Variety is in the Chagall painting the use of difference and change to increase the visual interest of the work. Okay, so we can do that in all kinds of different ways. And this graphic's going to look uh, a different graphic. So in this Coca-Cola ad here, we have some different things happening in variety. So we've got the variety of shape. We've got the variety of shape of the Coca-Cola bottle to the little floral and star designs that are coming out of the Coke bottle to the shapes that is creating the heart at the top to the negative space. So we've got contrast of colors that are all adding a lot of variety to the image and drawing emphasis where we want it. Lastly, we have proportion. Proportion is going to deal with scale, how big something is to compare it to something else. Such as in our Coca-Cola ad here. So we can see that we have proportion working to make a smile with these Coca-Cola bottles. But once you kind of start using these, you put these all together, you can see the elements of art and the principle design working in unison. So just in this one Coca-Cola ad that we're looking at, can you see shape of the Coca-Cola bottles and the shape of the mouth that's coming out because of the shape that they're putting in? The contrast of the colors, the contrast of the shape, the contrast of the size and scale. Do you see the rhythm of the lined up Coca-Cola bottles going from one side to the other to create a movement? Do you see unity? Does everything fit in this ad? Is there anything that's sticking out that doesn't seem to fit? How are they using color in this ad? Is it effective? Just to seeing that Coca-Cola red, as we mentioned before, does that help you identify that with the shape of the bottle? Does it identify with the product? And variety, is there enough variety in this piece? Do you see how we have used not only the shape, but the color and the contrast and the movement to create a variety so that we can identify our product? Is it successful with all those things? So, good design takes time. Okay, so the elements of art, most people at this stage have a good grasp on those. Principal designs are a little bit difficult, but over time, as you employ these elements and principles, you'll become better at utilizing them in your own artwork and recognizing how best to put them into practice when you design your own stuff. Now, you will become more skilled at recognizing these elements in the world of design around you and allow you to identify both good and bad design. When you see something and you see something that is a bad design, you'll be able to identify, oh, well, what's wrong with that? Something about that bugs me. Well, I can see, well, it doesn't have unity. It's got this thing that's sticking out, or the color's off, or that shape is isolated. But you won't learn it overnight. But with practice, you will be better at that. And they are all important to use in the world of design. All right, that's all we have for today. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, have a super duper day. Stay creative, and I will see you soon.